Hey class, in this video we're going to create a new program and introduce a concept in JavaScript called arrays. Arrays are a list of things in JavaScript. It's a data type that's very common in programming languages, and we can use it to do some interesting things in our programs. So let's get right into it. The first thing we want to do is create a Codepen. Go ahead and name it color changer and save it. In HTML, we're going to create a div with a button inside it. And we'll just write change color like that. Okay, so there we go. So now we have a button, doesn't do anything. Let's format this a little better. Just choose format HTML. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to add the onClick method to the button. All right, so just to review, we have a button and a div, and in the button's onClick event, we've added the function change color. So now we need to define that function in JavaScript. Let's just return something. So return true. And if I open the console, I can clear my error messages and check to see if that worked by typing change color. And I could see that it returned true. Now, in CSS, we can change the way the page looks. So let's write some CSS right now to modify our web page here. Let's take the div and start with that. So we're going to write a selector for the tag. So we just write the word div, no greater than or less than symbols around it. And then we use curly brackets to define a block of rules. This whole thing together with rules is called a rule set in CSS. Now to change the background color, the property is called background-color. So this is how we write a compound word, or two, it's not really a compound word, but it's like two separate words, and we can't use a space. If we use a space, then the browser will think that we're talking about two separate things here. So the convention for these properties is they use a dash. Now we're going to use a type of colon, and then we're going to set the color next to it. Let's say green, and then a semicolon, and we can see that the div changes to green, and I can see that the div goes all the way across the page. There's a little bit of space around our div, and that's actually a margin that comes from the body. So let's select the body tag by writing the word body and set the margin to 0. That should get rid of that. Now in the div, I want the shape of this div to go all the way across the page and all the way down the page, but right now it just goes all the way across the page. If I adjust the height to 100 VH, it should spread to fill the height of the page. VH stands for viewport height. So whatever the height of the page is, or the window, that's the size of the div. So the height of the div. Okay, so I've got that. Now let's put the button in the center. So I'm going to use a property called flex, or rather a property called display, and I'm going to set the value to flex. This is called the flexbox model, and it kind of changed things here. My button got huge, so the button just blew up to fill the available space. Let's just start off by centering the button. So to center something in a flexbox, to center it left to right, you're going to write justify content. And I should say left to right is There's a lot of context with that, so left to right isn't really the right word to use when we talk about it might sound strange, but the left side of our screen and the right side of our screen, you know, in English and in the United States, we read from left to right. So flexbox is a little bit more universal, like it supports other languages that maybe read, you know, top to bottom or right to left. So the term that I guess the nomenclature that it uses is start and end instead of left and right, because that allows the box model to be really flexible. So if I change my language to a language that reads right to left, the start and end properties will, you know, they'll automatically cascade and adjust. So it's kind of a neat concept, and it's slowly getting into a lot of the different property values. Okay, but anyway, how do we do this? We're just going to center it. So there we go. Now we can center things in CSS. Top and bottom would be align items, but this is already centered, right? It fills the whole page. So let's adjust our width. The width of this shall be 100 VW. There's the width. There we go. And I want to write a button tag. Whoops. So I'm going to write a button selector rather, and I'm going to create some rules for the button. So let's change the display of the button to inline block. And then I want to adjust the height to, let's just say 24px. And then I'll make it smaller. There we go. So now you can see that the button is actually at the top of the page. So I want to center it on the screen. So I'm going to use that align items property, and I'm going to change the value to center. There we go. Okay, so real quick, a little intro to Flexbox here. Surprise intro to Flexbox. When you use the display property flex, what that does is it changes the way the child elements behave. So the button is inside the div tag, so that means that it's a child of the div tag. So when I say display flex, the Flexbox properties, justify content and align items, those actually are controlling the children. So it doesn't change the way that my div works or it looks, but it does change the way that the button inside the div is laid out on the page. So we can get into that a lot more later on down the road, but I just wanted to show you this technique because it's a really simple way to just center things in CSS. Okay, so now that we have that, we are going to create a color changer. So what I want to happen is when I press this button, I want the background color to change. And we can see that we can do that with CSS. Now I can access the style of something in JavaScript, but first thing I need to do is select it. Let's create a variable called box, and we will use our document query selector, and we'll select our div. Oh, did that wrong. .q, there we go. So document is the object, and then query selector is the method, and we're searching for the div. So that's going to return the whole div, which is green right now. Okay, so let's just test this real quick. Instead of return true, let's do console.log, and we'll put the box inside our console.log. And when I press change color, I can see that it's selecting the whole object. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to take the box and I'm going to select the style property of the box. And within the style property, there's a whole bunch of stuff. So let's get the background color. Now, when I type background color, I can't use the dash here because that means subtraction in JavaScript. So instead, we're just going to capitalize the second word, and that's the convention for setting the CSS styles that have like multiple words in them in JavaScript. Okay, so now I have to use an equal sign, not the colon. I'm just going to open that so you can see the difference between the two properties here, background color, and then instead of green, let's put red. Actually, I'm going to use blue in case some of my viewers have trouble with red and green. Okay, so I've got a box object and I'm changing the style background color to blue. Notice that green, green doesn't have quotes around it, and that seems to work fine. But down here, I have to put quotes around blue because the word blue is a string. And if I try to do this without the quotes, JavaScript is going to think I'm talking about a variable or something, and it says, I don't know what that is. Invalid or unexpected token. So let me put that in quotes and change the color, and I can see that it worked. So let me just clear out my console. Yeah. There's nothing there. And hit change color, and I can see that it is working. Now, when we print out the object this time, we can see that it now contains a new attribute, the style attribute. And I can see that background color has a dash in it, just like before. And blue is actually lowercase, even though I typed it with a capital B here. Let me just fix that. And there we go. My error finally went away, and I can change the color to blue. Now, all this is doing is changing the color to blue. So let's finally get into arrays. So what I want to do is I want to create another variable that's going to hold all the colors that my function can access. So let's create another constant variable, and we'll name this colors. And after the equal sign, we're going to add square brackets. And inside the square brackets, we can create a list. So I'm just going to press enter here so that I make a new line. This is a little bit easier to see the items in my list. So let's add blue as a string. And to separate each item in our list, we're going to use a comma. Now in English, you would put the comma inside the quotes, but in JavaScript, that would mean that the comma is actually part of the string. So we're going to put it outside the quotes because it just separates the different string items, or the different strings or items in our array. Okay, so we have blue. Let's create one for red. Let's create one for orange, and one more for yellow. Okay. So I've got blue, red, orange, and yellow. No green. So let's add green to the end. There we go. Okay, so in my console, I can check this colors variable. If I type colors, I can, it is not defined because it's part of my function. Let's just move it outside the function for right now so that I can query it in my console here a little bit easier. And I can see that it's got 5 elements in it: blue, red, orange, yellow, and green. Okay. Now, each of these items has a number associated with it. And in computer science, we start numbering at 0. There are some languages that start at 1, but JavaScript starts at 0. That means that blue, the position of that element is at position 0, not position 1. It's the first thing in the list, yes, but we would call it position 0. Red is at position 1. And then orange is at position 2, yellow is at 3, and green is at 4. So there is no position 5. If I say colors and I use the square brackets, I can put a number in here, and it's just returning the value at that position. So 0 is blue. That's the first element. And 4 should be green. And it is. If I try 2, I'm getting orange. So that's how I can access all the different elements in my array. I can write the word colors, and then I can put a number inside the square brackets. Okay, so where it says box.style.background color, I can use colors and put a number in here. And so there's 2. All right, let's clear out my console and click change color, and it changed to orange. Okay, if I change it to 0, once it reloads, I can change the color, changes it to blue. So I can use numbers in here, and what I want to do, let me just back that up, is create another variable. This time I'm going to use a let, and we will set this to let count equal 0. Okay, so count. And inside colors, I can just put that variable, count. Sure, why not? Let's put that in there and let's see what happens. Change it to blue. And it did that because count, if I type this into the console, I can see that count is actually 0. Okay, I can increase the value of count by doing this. Count equals count plus 1. Your math teacher might freak out if they see this. This causes a some cognitive dissonance for math people. But remember, the equal symbol in computer science doesn't mean equality. It's not comparing two things. It's setting a new value. So it's taking whatever's in count and replacing it with the whatever's resolved over here. So count plus 1 would actually change it to 1, and then we would save it inside the old bucket. Okay, so let's try this. If I press change color, it changes it to blue, and I can check count. So count is now 1 because we changed it to blue and then we increased count. If I press it again, it is red. Well, colors 1, if you remember, let me write this over here. Colors 1 is red. Okay, and now what is count? Now count is 2. So count keeps going up by 1 every time I press the button. Okay, orange, yellow, and green. And now when I keep pressing change color, nothing happens. And if I check the count, I can see that's 13. So colors 13 is undefined. So I can see that we just have green here. It's not updating our background color. So I can't, colors count is undefined, okay? Because count is 13 right now. So what I'm going to do is use an if statement that checks the value of count. So right here, we can just say if count is greater than what? Let's say greater than 4, then we're going to reset count to 0. Because we're changing the value for count, we're changing it all over the place here. That's why I use the let keyword, because that changes. Okay, so now if I press change color, I can see that it's changing, and when I get to green, it goes back to blue. It just keeps rolling over. Okay, so here's green. Let's see what color is. Oh, sorry, not color. Count. Count is 0, and let's go ahead and change the color again. Okay, there it is, green. Oh, let me go back to the, what's the last color? Yellow. So the next color would be 4. Okay, so 4 would make it green, and it is. And then we never get to 5. That's the key here. If I check count, I can see that count is 0 because this did change it to 5, but then immediately I checked it and said, are you greater than 4? And if you are, changed it to 0. Okay, so this is a really simple way to use if statements with an array and a variable so that we can cycle through all the elements in our array. There's one more thing I should say. If we want to change the number of colors in here, if I want to add a color like purple, I can't access purple. So I've just added that to my list of colors, and I'm just going to format these a little different. It's okay that some of them have double quotes and some of them have single. It's a little messy, but it works. Let's hit change color. Purple never comes up. And the reason why purple's never coming up is because purple is actually item 5. So if I look and I type colors and I put a 5 in there, I can see now that is inside the index. Now 6 isn't, but 5 is. So how can I change this code so that it allows me to get 5 but never 6? Well, I could go and change this number here. I could change it to 5, but doing that means that every time I modify this list, every time the list changes, and maybe I want that to be dynamic, and I want the user to populate that list or something, and so that means I don't know how many colors are available at runtime. So if I adjust this a little bit, I can make this variable or this number here dynamic. I can make it dependent on the length of my array. So my array is it has a length of 6. Let me just type colors in here again and show you that. See the little gray value here? It says 6. That's the length of my variable colors, and I can access that with a property called length, and it returns the number 6. So this property length is built into arrays, and it always returns how many items are in the array. So I can actually, instead of using 5, I can say colors.length here. And now when I change the color, oh, there we go. Now we're getting purple. Okay, let's add some more colors. So instead of purple, oh, let's add, I'll delete my comment. Oh, rather purple's fine, but let's add another one, tomato. Okay, here we go. There's purple and there's tomato. And then back to blue. Interesting. So I just noticed something about this program. When I change the color and I get to tomato, I just noticed that when I click it a second time, it's tomato again. So I can see here down in my console that it actually printed tomato twice. Okay, so what's happening? So what's happening here? Why are we getting tomato twice? Well, let's find out. Let's debug this a little bit. So let's check the count. All right, so my count is 0. Let's go through this again. Blue, red, orange, yellow, green, purple, tomato. And before we get the second tomato, let's check our count. Count is 7. Okay, what is colors.length? Colors.length is also 7. Well, okay, so is 7 greater than 7? No. So my little code here isn't working because I said if count is greater than colors.length, set it to 0. And actually, it's not running because 7 is not greater than 7. So it's false, so it's just skipping over it. This is called a logic error. This is where you have a program and the syntax is totally fine. There's no errors in my code syntax, but it's not producing the right result. And that kind of error is a little tricky to chase down because you have to identify what it is doing instead of what you told it to do. And then, then you realize, oh, I did tell it to do the wrong thing. So what I'm going to do here is just subtract 1, or I could say greater than or equal to, like this. That's how we do greater than or equal to, or I could subtract 1 from colors.length, and both would give me the result I want. So let's start off with a greater than or equal to, and when I change the color, I can get to tomato. I see tomato there, and when I press it again, it goes back to blue. So that works. Let's try the other technique. -1. So the subtraction is going to happen first, and then the Boolean expression will be resolved. Okay, here's tomato, and now it's blue. Okay, so it's working. Both of these answers would work, and in practice you might see this kind of thing either way, but it's a really easy mistake to make, and it's part of the process of coding, which is testing your program, making sure it works as expected, and when it doesn't, pinpointing the point of failure, checking all your variables, and trying to fix your bugs. So that's our program, our little color change program. Go ahead and add some more colors if you want. Try to add more features if you'd like. And if you have bugs and you can't solve them, I'd be happy to help. So send me a comment or a link to your Codepen, and I'll take a look. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching.